Hey, greetings, everyone. Welcome back to the Steadfast and Loyal podcast. And as you saw in my opening, we're talking about this whole issue about the Second Amendment, where it says very simply, a well-regulated militia, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Pretty simple language for me. And we just laid out some of the weapons that I had from my home to just give an understanding of what this whole thing about semi-automatic rifles and weapons of war, what it really means. But when you boil it down, this is all about disarming the populace because every totalitarian, tyrannical government has had to disarm people in order to control them. And one of the topics that people always bring out is that when there is some type of shooting, politicians are supposed to do something. They're supposed to fix this. And of course, the way that they fix it is that they have to go after the weapon and not look at the person. So I want to bring in a very close and dear friend of mine who, without a doubt, is a hero. Because if you think about and you remember what happened on November the 5th of 2017 in Sutherland Springs, Texas, when someone went into a church, it was his church, and they started to fire an AR-15 in that church, a semi-automatic rifle, killing the congregants there. One person moved to the sound of the guns. One person, an ordinary individual, did an extraordinary thing, and that is my dear friend, Stephen Willeford. Stephen, it's such a pleasure and an honor to be joined with you. I believe you're down in my birth town of Atlanta, Georgia.
I am right by Atlanta, Georgia, and I love Georgia.
Well, it's a pretty great state, and I'm honored to be a son of Georgia, but I'm also honored to be one of those many Georgians who came here to the state of Texas to fight for liberty and freedom, like Mirabeau Lamar and also Colonel Fannin. Let's talk about what happened back on that day, November the 5th of 2017. When you heard those shots ringing out and your daughter brought it to your attention, what went through your mind?
Well, I just knew that this couldn't happen in my community. We're a small, tight-knit community of less than 600 people total population. And, this is my community, the community that I'm fourth generation in, and the community I love. And so immediately what went through my mind is this can't happen. And, y- you know, my daughter, uh, bless her heart, she thinks her daddy can fix anything. And she came running in and told me that the shooting was happening, knowing that I would get into action.
And that's what's supposed to happen is that, part of that understanding of the well-regulated militia, because we cannot carry a police officer on our hip at all times. But when you have individuals that can respond to emergency like you did, that is how we save lives in the community. And I think that that was one of the things that we saw in contrast, you being able to, go into your gun closet, arm yourself, and go in and confront this assailant, this attacker. Think about if the parents down in Uvalde, Texas, had been able to do the same thing, maybe there would have been a different result.
Absolutely, I believe that to be so. We need to get rid of gun-free zones. It is not serving us well to have gun-free zones. Uh, there's the only thing, and remember, and you talked about not, you can't have a police officer with you everywhere you go, and that's the fact. Chris Bird wrote a book, and the subtitle of the book is "When Seconds Count, Police Are Only Minutes Away."
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we need to remember. Police call themselves first responders, but that's not exactly true. Uh, we need to realize we're the first responders. And I'm not trying to disrespect police officers because, for the most part, they're running into battle as fast as they can, risking their lives with their cars running through traffic, trying to get to a situation and risk their lives for people that they don't even know for the most part. And so I'm not trying to disrespect police department, but as you said yourself, you can't have an officer everywhere you go.
Yeah, and the interesting thing when you go back and you do the real analysis of what happened in Sutherland Springs, and I find that so perplexing because that's not what the politicians want to do. The person that went into your church, into your community, and brought that evil should have never been able to acquire any type of firearm. Because when you look at the 4473 background check form, it specifically asks about a dishonorable discharge from the United States military. And this assailant there in Sutherland Springs had been convicted of a domestic violence crime in the Air Force, served time, felony offense, and he had that dishonorable discharge. So he basically lied on the 4473 form. So, in other words, it was a failure of the system because the Air Force never input him into the system. So, why is it, do you think, that the politicians and everyone, to include the progressive socialist left, they never look at the specifics. They never look at the individual that is involved in the shooting. They immediately want to go to the weapon.
Well, let's look at it all together with this individual. First off, he dismembered his infant son's puppy in front of him alive to get his infant son to quit crying. That was a felony, cruelty to an animal. And then when he didn't quit crying, then he beat his infant son until he fractured his skull. That was another felony, and that was also family violence, which is, both of them are asked on that form. And they put him in jail, and when he got out of jail, they were going to get him out of the Air Force. So they brought him before a board, and he threatened to kill everybody on the board, which is terroristic threats. So they put him into a mental hospital, where he then escaped from the mental hospital, which the forms ask about mental illness. Mm-hmm. And then finally they got him in and gave him a less than honorable discharge. And the military did not enter any of it into the NICS system. I'm going to tell you that if background checks worked, the government, the Air Force, was totally inept in everything they did, and they didn't enter any of it into the NICS system. So they want to implement another background check. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So they want to implement another background check. For what reason, when they can't even do the background check that is existing?
Yeah, that's my point. And so when I look at again here the issue in Uvalde, and I brought it up in my opening monologue, the individual, the shooter there, lived in a residence with a grandfather who had a criminal record. That grandfather's criminal record, it meant that he could not possess any firearms, nor could he be near any firearms, but yet that's the address that shooter used on his 4473 background check. And again, no, I hate to use the term, no red flags, no indicators and warnings, but yet we keep hearing that we need new laws. I think it's just a matter of enforcing the laws and checking the system that already exists.
Understand, this young man had a pistol also, is what I've been told. He also had a pistol, and that particular pistol was illegal for him to own anyway. Mm-hmm. So he's already breaking the laws to own a pistol, because right now we have a law against anyone 18 years or anyone 21 under 21 owning a pistol or mm-hmm. buying a pistol. So he had a pistol, so he's already breaking laws anyway. Now, personally, I truly believe that any 18-year-old should be able to buy a gun, of any kind of gun. Because this isn't, make no mistake, this is not a maturity issue. The shooter in Sutherland Springs was 26 years old. This is a mental health issue. Mm-hmm. It has nothing to do with the maturity, and you yourself, as being an Army colonel, know that young men and women at the age of 17 can sign up to go into the military and can be trained and can be very responsible and can be given an M16 and travel around the world defending our freedom here and ride in an M1 Abram tank for goodness sakes. This has nothing to do with maturity. It has to do with mental illness.
No, you're absolutely right. Now, let's talk about the weapon that you used to neutralize this assailant, the shooter in Sutherland Springs, is the weapon that everyone is saying we have to take it away from people. And again, it comes back to what you just said. This is about legal, law-abiding, responsible gun owners. You know, why would they want to deny you the ability to be able to decide what weapon you want to use instead of looking at the assailant, the shooter themselves?
So when I went across the street, I grabbed an AR-15, a semi-automatic modern sporting rifle. And the left likes to say, oh, you can't hunt with one of them. First off, I do hunt with mine. And second, the Second Amendment has nothing to do with hunting. And if I hear Biden talk about a deer wearing armor again, I just can't handle that. This rifle I built for competition and sporting use. And I built it myself. And they want to ban any guns that you can manufacture, that you can put together by yourself. How ridiculous is that? They want to demonize a gun. And yet the FBI statistics itself, if you go and look at the FBI and murders, that more people are killed by hammers and blunt instruments than rifles in general. And that includes 22 bolt action rifles all the way up to whatever other rifle. But more people are killed by hammers than rifles every year. So they're trying to ban something that's a tool. And that's what an AR-15 is, a tool. It has nothing to do with an inanimate object. I used my AR-15 to save lives in Sutherland Springs. And his AR-15 was in evil hands.
No, you're absolutely right. And it's just that simple. But for whatever reason, that's what people want to focus on instead of focusing on the real issues and the real problems. So let's move to where we are today and now. Last week, we saw in the United States House of Representatives, they passed, these restrictive gun control measures. Now in the United States Senate, they have agreed to a quote unquote framework that they're going to put in legislative language. How do you feel about what is being done up there on Capitol Hill? And then we'll talk about, what's being done here in the state of Texas.
10 senators have signed on, 10 senators. And what an embarrassment that one of the senators is John Cornyn from my state of Texas. 10 senators have signed on to this framework. And I would love to ask John Cornyn which one of these gun control acts that he has signed on to would have stopped the shooting in Uvalde, Texas. And I'm going to say nothing. None of them address what happened.
Would you agree with me, and this is something that I hold very dear, if you're a juvenile and you display this violent behavior like we have seen in so many of these cases, that should be entered into the system? And so that, when you become 18, and you try to go and purchase a weapon in the state of Texas or anywhere in the United States of America, it's already there. I mean, we don't decide that, well, this was when they were juvenile, that cannot be put into the system, and so they have a clean slate at 18, because I think that we're creating a loophole. That's one of the things that we should be looking at, but that's not part of this framework.
This young monster, and I'm not going to call him a young man, this young monster had made threats over the internet. You don't make threats. You don't get to do that. That's illegal to make threats like that. The FBI already knew about him, and yet they did nothing about it. In so many other cases, Parkland included, in some of the other cases, the Buffalo shooter, they all made threats ahead of time. Those are terroristic threats, and they should be taken seriously. You say, oh, well, what we say on social media doesn't matter. No, it does matter.
Well,
It
it's
does.
amazing. You bring that up because if you and I were going on social media and say that we believe there are unconstitutional actions that led to voting irregularities in the November 2020 election cycle, we'll get kicked off of social media. But yet, people can post violent threats and things of this nature. The Buffalo shooter even had said he wanted to go and shoot up his own high school. And his high school was 90% white, so that's why I don't think this was so much a racial thing. I mean, this kid was just crazy. So, does the social media platforms also have a sense of culpability with this that seems no one is talking about?
Well, at one point I sit in on the governor's roundtable in Texas, and he talked to the people that ran Facebook, and said, "Don't you think that we could do something to report these threats?" And the people that ran Facebook said, yes, that could be done, but yet they don't do it. Instead, so like my Facebook, they kicked me off for just posting what the lawyers of Kyle Rittenhouse had said. Just the lawyer's statement, my total site got shut down. And for posting something that the lawyers said, it was just reposting something, and it wasn't even me stating anything about it.
And that's funny because we saw with the subway shooter who used smoke bomb and grenades and things of this nature. He had a history of posting very violent things. We saw with the individual that drove the car through the crowd at the Christmas parade in Waukesha, Wisconsin. He had been posting violent things. So again, it is very perplexing to me that no one is held accountable. And something else is pretty troubling. We continue to give these social media, Meta, Facebook, whatever, that Google, whatever they want to call it, we give them all these tax breaks to be here in the state of Texas, but they're not taking any responsibility. Let's talk about your role right now with the Gun Owners of America, because they brought you on. You're a great spokesperson. What do you think you can do and achieve as a spokesperson for Gun Owners of America?
Well, I'm going out there nationwide making people aware of it. I'm doing probably 5 to 6 when I'm home and not traveling. I'm doing 5 to 6 radio shows a day and 2 to 3 television or podcasts per week, getting the word out there and trying to educate people. And I'm not only on conservative channels, but I'm also been with some liberal radio hosts that tried to attack me.
Mm-hmm.
One said all of us gun owners that own AR-15s, we're more concerned about our guns than we are children's lives in a school. And I said, how dare you?
Yeah.
And I used my AR-15 and risked my life to save children. And how dare you say that I care more about my gun than I do the children? Do I care more about my gun than I do about my life? Because that's what I did, is I risked my life for not just children, but anyone in the church.
Well, it's very interesting that that leftist commentator will attack you, a person who came out of their home armed, and the story is very hilarious. I mean, you did not even take time to put on shoes, and you went and neutralized a shooter whose the fault and the responsibility is with the government for failing, but yet all of a sudden it's about you. And so that's why when I look at these shootings and what ends up coming about, the left, and let's be honest, some Republicans, the left, they don't care about resolving the issue. They're always looking how never let a good crisis go to waste. So what things can you do and what can Gun Owners of America do to make sure that we are standing up and protecting that Second Amendment right? And I'll also say that you're a trained firearms instructor as well. So you're not just Jim Bob, Joe Bob running around out there. You're someone that understands how to direct fire against, accurate fire against an assailant.
So actually, thank you for that. I travel. I have spoken to congressmen and women in Washington, D.C., Again, like I say, I'm educating, I'm speaking at different events and being brought all around. I'm going to the Texas Republican Convention this week, this coming week, and where I'm going to hold our politicians' feet to the fire and let them know that. And frankly, the state of Texas has signed a Second Amendment sanctuary state. We are going to find out how much they really believe in that, because it's supposed to ignore any federal laws that are unconstitutional
Hmm.
coming down. And we're going to see exactly what their resolve is in the state of Texas, and we have the right to deny those laws.
Well, I'm very concerned about the bribery of the grant money coming to a state if they implement red flag laws at the state level, because red flag laws are a clear violation of a Second Amendment and Fourth Amendment rights of the individual. Okay, I got a couple of minutes left. What is the message that you want to impart to gun owners and those who are not gun owners, and also to our politicians?
First off, if you're not a gun owner and you don't understand, educate yourself. If you are a gun owner, I would like to ask for help, because the GOA is the only no compromise uh, gun advocacy group in this country. And please go out and become a member, and that will help us fight the fight. If you're a gun owner and you're not a member, then maybe you ought to. And if you're saying, well, a NRA member, or I'm a Second Amendment Foundation member, so am I. I'm a
Hmm.
life member of the NRA. I'm a life member of the Second Amendment Foundation, and I'm a life member of TSRA.
Hmm.
And I believe in the shotgun effect on that too. Just sign up to all of us. But when I chose to work for an organization, it was the GOA, because we're really fighting and making the difference all together. If you're a gun owner, if you think that you would be a sheepdog as such and that you would run to the battle, you're not going to run to the battle unless you train yourself. I'm not saying that all gun owners should be trained, by no means. But if you think you're that kind of person, it's time to get into a little bit of competition, a little bit of training and stuff, because your mind can never go, or your body can never go where your not, mind has never been. And I would encourage a little extra training if you think you would do something like this. Um, Again, I don't think that you must have training to exercise your Second Amendment right, but it would be prudent to think about.
Well, Stephen, where can people follow you and support you and all that you're doing? Website and social media.
So go to gunowners.org, gunowners.org, and you can go to thebarefootdefender.com. That's my website. And it's been a while since I've been on YouTube, but I also have Barefoot Defender on YouTube and have several videos on that, and planning on stepping up a little bit more on my videos and getting that back out also. So you can find out more about me at thebarefootdefender.com. And I'll see you out there. I'm traveling the whole nation now.
Absolutely. And it was great to see you out in Colorado. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Willeford, an American and Texas hero. And Stephen embodies this quote that God does not call the equipped, he equips those that he calls. And Stephen answered the call. He moved to the sound of the guns and he saved lives. So God bless you and thank you for being on the Steadfast and Loyal podcast, Stephen.
God bless you too. Thank you.